Curtis, my friend, I'm so happy that you made time early in the morning in Houston, Texas, here from the Netherlands. I'm super happy that you are in my call, that you want to explain us a little bit about cultural differences. And you are a Lego Series Play facilitator. I work with you in the US, and I think you do an amazing job. We had already 100 talks together. I think that's my feeling. I have the feeling you are a brother of another mother. Uh,
Yeah.
I love you to death, but I know who you are. Could you share with all our listeners a little bit of who you are, where you came from, and how it all started?
Martijn, thanks for the generous welcome. Just so appreciate our friendship and just sweet memories of having dim sum in LA, Chinese food to going over to the Einstein house and going to different conferences. Just appreciate you and your friendship. I'm Curtis Isozaki, everyone, and I'm based out here in Texas. I find myself in Waco, Austin, Dallas, but I'm in Houston, I'm practicing Lego Series Play and also out in California. But really, I'm based in Waco, Texas. I work at Baylor University. Sikkim Bears. We love our football and sports out here in America. And it's not football, soccer, but football, Patrick Mahomes, right? Yeah, absolutely. The Super Bowl. I am a higher education professional, leadership practitioner, a Gallup certified strengths coach,
Wow.
Lego Series Play facilitator, human centered designer, and strategic futurist. And it makes up this combination of me seeking to be a creative leader that leads from a posture of authenticity. I have my own coaching group called Isozaki Coaching. My last name, Isozaki, means a tree planted by living water. And when a tree is planted by water, it really soaks up the nutrients in a space, like in a Lego Series Play workshop. When we linger more and ask questions about the model, we get to deeper meaning. And so I love that about my last name. And really, our heart is to, Martijn, I don't know if I've told you this, but it's to champion leaders and organizations to skyrocket their engagement and performance to achieve their goals. And so I have the Pharrell rocket ship in the background as a reminder to skyrocket and rocket your performance and not be a lonely guy silent quitting. And so, those 80, most of the time in meetings, 20% of the room is having all the conversation and we can be a lonely guy. But man, organizations that have 100% participation and engagement, 100% of the time, you aren't going to be a lonely guy. You're going to skyrocket your organization's potential. And I partner with Brandon Wetstein over in New York City with Innate Create, and they seek to unlock creative genius within people and tap into the wellspring of creativity, passion, and knowledge. And so love Brandon, doing a lot of fun team building things. You gotta bring Brandon out of this conversation. If Brandon was here, we just have a ton of fun. We spent time together in California, all three of us. But man, got to get Brandon. He's a joy. He's a blast, and man, hopefully you get to introduce him another time. But Martijn, it's great to be here, and man, a highlight of my day, week, and just appreciate you, brother, from another mother.
Awesome. Hey, you say something about the lonely guy. What does that mean, the
Yeah,
lonely
yeah,
guy?
lonely guy. Kind of like what I was talking about is, I'm a Gallup certified strengths coach, and so we stay in Gallup with this Clifton Strengths Assessment that has 34 different themes, and everyone who takes the assessment have 5 talents that they identify. And what that really means is that on the metrics of all the people who have taken the assessment, we find that a person is one in 34 million in the world of that combination of strengths. And the more we add to people taking this assessment, the more that one becomes one of maybe 35 million in the strengths revolution. But it's kind of a way and maybe a fun segue thinking about cultural differences and differences in people that man, Martijn is one of a kind, and y'all have been, in this podcast series. You work with Martijn; he's one of a kind. I'm one of a kind, and sometimes when we're in spaces and meetings where one person is dominating the entire conversation, it's not a facilitated space. You don't have a healthy master, you know, you don't have a healthy facilitator, you have a transactional, toxic, authoritarian leader. You know, they probably are really alone, but really like tyrannical sometimes to
Yeah.
be too extreme, just for the sake of being extreme. And everyone else feels lonely. And that being that one person who has a lot of creative capacity in them, being silenced in a meeting, you start to feel lonely. And so for me, my interpretation of the lonely guy is, man, what does it look like for meetings, spaces, groups, teams, organizations? And if we're about agile, which is all about the customer, all about collaboration,
Yeah.
man, there's no room for a lonely guy, right? And man, this is why these conversations are helpful. So if you feel like a lonely person out there, right, like you're not alone, you found a great community, LSP Agile, and Martijn's ready to be a collaborator with you, right?
Yeah. And I think it's super interesting because I think in every
Yeah,
team, um, and it is not always the same person. There's always a lonely guy person in the room. And if it is not on this talk, it is on a different one. And I think for me, Lego is a really good way to give everybody a voice in the room. But that is, of course, in some cultures, really hard to take that voice.
mm-hmm.
I would like to know afterwards a little bit more about that as well. But
Yeah,
Curtis, you are not N1, I would say. You're not standard in the US either. I know
yeah.
you have a different mother and a different father. Can you take us a little bit about the little Curtis and who you are and why cultural difference became a thing for you?
Yeah. So a little bit about my background. I am Chinese American, Japanese American on my Chinese side, third generation. So that means that my grandma and grandpa, they immigrated over the US, went to Angel Island, the whole process. Really like a lonely person, just kind
Yeah,
of alone to find a new life amidst everything that was going on, you know, three generations ago in a red country over in China and the Republic of China. And so there's all this history and background there and great opportunity for the American dream. And that conversation around the American dream right now is a pretty wild conversation culturally in America today, right?
it
And then
is.
on my other side, I come from a Japanese American background, fourth generation. We like to say yonsei. And that what that means is my great grandparents, they immigrated over from Japan. And so while this was kind of going on, you know, my grandparents, my great grandparents, you know, they weren't in Japan or China when World War II was going on. And so when World War II was happening, my grandparents on my Japanese side and my great grandparents, they ended up being in those Japanese internment camps,
Yeah,
concentration camps in America. And that was their experience, and that's a part of my history and legacy. And so it's oftentimes because I am Asian, people assume that because of my intersectionality of being Japanese and Chinese, those two countries, right, were horrifically at war with each other. But while that was taking place in one place, my grandparents were working really hard in LA trying to make a life for themselves amidst a lot of discrimination and had to become this what they call a model minority. And on the Japanese side, my grandparents, they were in barracks and in the middle of nowhere in America, and they also were pursuing the American dream. But my grandparents' siblings, they actually went to go fight in World War II. And I know that just with, you know, this is a global podcast and we all have different parts of history. And a part of that history, they went out to actually, they're part of 442 Regiment. And they went out there and they actually rescued the Texas Battalion. And so it's kind of crazy being one of the only Japanese Americans in Waco, Texas, and being able to say, hey, my grandparents, and friends' grandparents actually saved your grandparents over there
wow.
in Europe. And so, like, that's a part of me. And you know, we live all over our world, especially after the pandemic, during the pandemic, we were always well aware of the challenges and the opportunities that come with cultural differences. But even more so with some of the more personal hurt and pain, and seeing death, seeing persecution, seeing, you know, prejudices and racism. And I know this isn't really often the space, y'all, for like this conversation, but since Martijn asked, I'm gonna be honest. But for me, I think it sets the groundwork for a conversation around cultural differences in LSP. And I stood before a judge. Not actually, I wasn't in prison or getting in trouble with anything. Like,
Not
that's
this time.
awesome. But not this time, not this time. Because man, if we torture people with Lego serious play, right, Martijn, we might get into trouble and stand before a judge. But I'm a PhD student in global leadership and change at Pepperdine University, and I stood before a judge out in LA, in Malibu, post all the fires that were kind of going on out there. And he approved this idea that we can create shared understanding with Lego serious play.
Yeah.
I mean, I stood before a judge and he stamp of approval said, I've been a judge for many years, decades, at one of the top law schools in the nation. And I deal with mediation all the time. And I have yet to find a solution. I've yet to find a healthy solution. And that's Lego serious play. And he approved it. I had this data guy who wrote books on strategic planning, systems thinking,
Yeah.
and leadership. And this advanced data analyst said, anything you need to collect data as it relates to publishing more research around Lego serious play, you let me know. And so that's going a little bit deeper, Martijn. That you can hear my passion and excitement as executive coach and consultant. But man, I want to honor my grandparents who've gone before me, who've created opportunities for me here, and love to see a unified global world and economy. And I believe that there's an opportunity for global shalom. And man, that's what I love about Lego Serious Play. That's what I love about LSP Agile. It's a global community, and just our friendship in and of itself is a reminder of man, I'm not alone. I got these crazy ideas. Believe in Lego Serious Play, and I'm not a lonely guy because it can help in a conversation like this, my time.
Hey,
Yeah,
and thinking
yeah.
about that, so for me, it's triggering so many questions at the same time. I'm gonna be honest. I have difficulties in not diverting too far away because it's like it's always happening to me when I'm with conversation with you. It's like 1,000 things that I want to touch on. But for me, it's
Yeah,
super interesting. So you are a facilitator.
yeah,
What did you notice as facilitator, knowing all the stuff that you know as well of cultural difference? What did you
yeah.
notice when playing with Lego in a serious play setting?
Hmm.
What did you notice about these cultural differences, and how does it work?
Yeah, yeah. You know, it's limited to say that a lot of our Western thought, right, comes from, you know, old books like Socrates, Aristotle, and, you know,
True.
Plato and all those people. We need to start a conversation around cultural differences with them. But I think Plato said it well when he said, you know, you can learn more about a person in an hour of play than in a year of conversation. And so when you think about one of the last conversations you had, where it was like, I completely don't agree with you, or something you said earlier is like, hey, I always have an opinion, absolutely, or a question, right? Um, Man, what if we engage in an hour of play instead of a year of debates and conversation? This is coming from the dialogue guy himself, and you know our colleagues, you know, Per and Robert talk about Lego Serious Play as a thinking, communication, and problem solving technique. And we just have great challenges. So when I was exposed to Lego Serious Play from our friends and colleagues, Jillian and Wendy, it was an opportunity of that 100, 100, 100 idea that like I hadn't been in a space where we had 100% participation, 100% engagement, 100% of the time. And so as a facilitator, to know that I could create a hospitable, psychologically safe environment that allows for healthy dialogue right, with our various rules of engagement, like respect, the builder is always right. Don't talk over someone, right? Unleash your creativity, have fun. Like that was something I wanted to be a part of because, like that judge said, it hasn't happened before. And to, not diverge too much, I've been flying all over the US for Lego Serious Play workshops and for my PhD program for conferences. And one day I was going down the escalator in Dallas Fort Worth Airport, if you've been there, and there's little stores and restaurants as you get off of the little train. And I saw this magazine, Martijn, and maybe it says that the magic of Lego, and it says the toy that changed the world.
It does.
I mean, and we need that can really change our worlds in an honoring way. And so, kind of a broad stroke to your question, make it short. I'm so convinced that there's not another methodology that can help with healthy dialogue, group development, and play. And those three things are so necessary for our world. And just to get you thinking more, Martijn, and everyone else, I mean, with the world of AI that's become a playground metacognitively, like sometimes we need to move from that metacognition and engage with the connectiveness and the constructionism of this metacognitive world, where you can take I think we talked about this over lunch one time, taking existential ideas and bring it into physical reality. I mean, you have a different articulation of trust as I do. You have a different idea of how America's doing versus I do. But like, instead of talking at each other, let's talk about the model. We may see something different. And so that's me. What it led to is like, and where we met at the conference was, man, I'm convinced that cultural intelligence by Livermore and culture mapping with Aaron Myers and the cultural continuum with Lindsay and my dear mentor, Dr. Richard Martinez, that the combination of cultural intelligence, culture mapping, and the cultural continuum is a helpful tool layered within the methodology so that facilitators can be more effective with their influence. And so that's kind of the long stroke journey of like, why Lego Serious Play? What'd you find about it as it relates to your cultural differences? And just a final note, and this is long-winded, Martijn, but again, the group is getting really a good use of their time with this. Is Asian American during this time and just in general, there's a cultural expectation, is what I'll say in spaces. And I live in Texas now. That's different from California.
It is.
And that's different from an Asian person in tech. But working in higher education, where 0.4% of university presidents are identified as Asian American, Pacific Islander, Native American, what that says to me, Martijn, is that I don't got a lot of representation. And for me in those spaces, I actually have to work a lot harder to have a voice, to share a perspective. When I'm constantly thinking about emergence, like might be worth considering hearing the genius in the room, the collective genius. And that's what Agile is all about, right?
Yeah.
And so that's why I've made it a part of like my heart and mission is I think this area of cultural differences can help bring out more creativity. And LSP is one of the main methodologies that allow for that to happen.
So this is a two-step question almost. I see that culture is also changing very rapidly. Like, I thought we are in a VUCA world, very volatile, very uncertain. And that used to be just business, but now everything changes from pronouns. How should I call somebody? Until what is not allowed and allowed anymore. And I realized that just that you said, in California or Texas, it's like a different country. Yeah, officially same blue passport, but it's a different country.
Yeah, they've made movies about this.
yeah, exactly. So, but for me, then is a super interesting question. If you are a facilitator, what is something that me as a facilitator and all our listeners that are Lego Serious Play facilitators in an agile world or not, and maybe a facilitator in general, what is something that we should be aware of and should think about to bridge? Because on a natural way, Lego does it, but what do we as facilitators need to remember to bridge cultural differences?
Yes, absolutely. So, just to go to the Einstein house where we spent time together in Pasadena, one of the things that Einstein says is learning is an experience, everything else is information. Man, if we're just having
Learn is
conversations,
experience, everything else is information.
say it again, Martijn. I interrupted you.
No, but that's what you said.
Yeah,
Einstein said, learning is an experience, the rest is all information.
yeah.
Wow.
I mean, he's the genius of our world and our time, right?
Yes.
And he found something about an experience. And the Lego serious play methodology and the posture of agile, it's about cultivating experiences. And so anything else you do, like watching a PowerPoint or a lecture in the higher education space, it's just information. And we know that information goes in one year, out the other year. And the next generation, like that book, Anxious Generation, it talks about how, I mean, you 10 seconds to gain, less than 10 seconds to gain a person's attention. And so if we're working with an AI generation, an alpha beta generation, Gen Z generation, yeah, facilitators, that's your next group of clientele. And Martijn works with the scouts and I mean that generation like needs experiences that artificial intelligence can't offer. So I'll say that to facilitators first and reminding them like at the core of the methodology, right, is connectivism, constructionism, flow, psychological safety, but these two learning theories of situated learning that like Lego Serious Play creates a space of situated learning, like you're creating an experience. That's why I mentioned the Einstein quote. But then you have people coming from different backgrounds, which creates Vygotsky's zone of proximal development, right? And so when we just show up in the space with our differences, facilitators, you have an important job, and it's being a steward of the collective genius that is in the room. And if you show up and you're just bulldozing through everyone's ideas and thoughts or talking too much, especially as a Lego Serious Play facilitator, and not doing what Martijn's doing in this conversation, asking a really, really good question and scaffolding to come up with a better one than the last one that just was on his mind before his mouth opened, like that's an opportunity. But I mentioned cultural intelligence, culture mapping, and cultural continuum. If you've been working with Martijn, I know he's been using culture mapping, and so if it's okay, Martijn, would you like me to briefly explain each of those three?
Please.
Okay. And because everything's an experience, we're just this is all information. I brought some Lego bricks, if that's okay, right? So this is what I built for cultural intelligence, and it consists of 4 CQ cultural intelligence capabilities. And the first one is drive. You have to be motivated. You got to be motivated. So you got to be motivated, and then the next one is knowledge. I have it transparent because knowledge is fluid, right? And that allows you to understand cultures. Like go in with the posture of learning. Learn about cultures before you show up into a space with 5 different cultures, right? And then strategy. I have the color red because a mentor of mine, Robert Sutton, and Huggy Raw over at Stanford University in the design world, it talks about this idea of friction fixers that we got to stop and we got to fix the friction, right? And so we got to take a moment to do the Lewin, freeze moment, to take a moment to build, to anticipate, adjust, and plan. And that's what LSP is all about, with systems, right?
Yeah.
Thinking and Senge. And then you have action, the yellow, adapt your behavior. And so there's that one. Martijn, I mean, I could go into the next 2 with Lego models, but
Go for
I know
it.
that's a lot of information. Go for it. Okay.
Go for it. It's super
I know the people,
interesting.
the people got to process a little bit, right? So you got drive, knowledge, strategy, and action. The next one you have is this idea of culture mapping. Now, so this is a little bit kind of a crazier model. But what I'll say is Aaron Myers developed 8 scales, and this was super fun to do at the conference. They have a tool called the culture map where you can input like different cultures. Like maybe you find out there are these 4 different cultures that are going to show up in your workshop, or you're aware of that in advance because you're doing that in your organization. And then it maps those cultures across 8 scales, communicating, evaluating, persuading, leading, deciding, trust, disagreeing, and scheduling. Now you're smart, you can go online and look these up, but what I have is this scale here. So I picked up the wrong one. We'll talk about this one later. So here you have different scales. So imagine this is a culture, this is a culture, this is a culture. So maybe you have like US, American, or maybe you have the Danish or right, you know, and the over the Dutch, right, or you know, different, you know, Asian culture, whatever it may be. It could be across the spectrum, right? And I'm not saying one's one or the other for the sake of this example, but basically the cultures will be kind of placed across. And you know, you have Eastern, Western philosophy, but really they're looking at particular countries, and they've studied, I think, over 30 plus now. And so for this particular one, I built a model particularly for the leading kind of part of the mapping scale. And so for leading, just to focus on one, in one culture you may have a more egalitarian preference, you know, more collective, more communal, and then another culture, and neither of these kind of styles are one better than the other. We all have preferences, right? And so one's would be egalitarian, another one would be more hierarchical. So this one you can kind of see like this person, again, the hand posture wasn't intentional. Put that one down. Let me put that down. But like you have kind of like, it's a person-centric leader kind of approach. It's hierarchical. What I say goes. This is how I want it done. Build the tower, right? And someone who's not used to a hierarchical culture, and you say build the effing tower, and then your phenotype or ethnic background is different from another one. In America, I've been in some spaces where one ethnic background said to another ethnic background, build the tower, and it triggered in their body systems from 3 generations earlier who were told to build something. Yeah. Ooh, if you're coming from a hierarchical background, could we be kind and choose to understand that maybe this community is coming from a more collective approach, or even just the statement, build a tower, could actually be incredibly hurtful in a certain context, right? Over here, I have legs for this egalitarian approach because maybe it's more mobile. There's a lot of engagement. Not that a hierarchical kind of style isn't now, right? But just different approaches and familiarities of culture. So maybe if you're more on this culture as a facilitator, great. How do you kind of understand and take into consideration this more egalitarian space? Mm-hmm. And then if you're on this, how do you take and consider this? Maybe you need to be really clear, right? If you're an egalitarian type of facilitator, working with more of a hierarchical culture. Or maybe you need to be, you know, like what we like to say, sufficiently unclear, or just kind of soften provide a little more context before you like ask the question. I know that was a really tough example, but that's an example of culture mapping. And then the next one, Martijn, I know this is a lot of information, but here's the cultural proficiency continuum. The cultural proficiency continuum, and I'll give a nod to my mentor. He told me this idea, and this changed my life, because I work in spaces where everyone's in a polarity. It's like, goodness me, everyone's operating, this is the right way, this is the wrong way. It's no, like, let's like understand, right? That's America in a nutshell for my global friends. And so I and the world in this moment. Thank you. That's very generous. And so but in this context, my mentor told me, he was giving me some advice. He said, Curtis, and this is worth a quote. Dr. Richard Martinez over at Azusa Pacific told me this: understanding comes at the point of articulation. And when there's no articulation, people fill the void. So Martijn, you have an understanding, or our friends have an understanding of what I just said about hierarchical cultures.
Yeah.
Man, if I didn't articulate and just didn't even explain the difference between two, we would have already been like, I'm checked out, forget this. But like I tried to articulate this in a way of like, if you're a hierarchical type of cultural facilitator versus a egalitarian kind of facilitator, well, if you don't learn how to engage with this culture, which many do have to switch back and forth, if you've had to deal with that in your life, you're
Mhm.
missing out on a lot of clients. so so
Yeah.
I would say maybe consider that. And on this idea of understanding comes at a point of articulation. When we articulate our ideas, it doesn't provide an opportunity to fill the void. It encourages, hey, that's my articulation. Let's go on a journey and let's fill the void together.
Yeah.
Right? That's what LSP and shared understanding, shared model is all about, right? So 6 points to the cultural proficiency continuum by Lindsay and Martinez. It goes from red to green. That's not actually in the text, but in this model, it's my model. Builder's always right. Cultural destructiveness to cultural proficiency.
Yeah.
Cultural destructiveness seeks to eliminate vestiges in other cultures.
Yeah.
Like it literally seeks elimination. And then you have cultural incapacity, which seeks to make cultures of others appear to be wrong. Because my culture is the dominant culture, you're wrong. Cultural incapacity, cultural blindness. So I have this red brick for that one incapacity, and then you got this I, right? Cultural blindness,
Yeah.
refusing to acknowledge the culture of others. I
Mm.
mean, to not even consider culture mapping may mean that we're entering as a facilitator culturally blind,
Yeah.
right? I know that's a tough one for people to hear. We're just trying to create psychologically safe places in agile environments, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
More collaborative spaces. And so then there's pre-competence, this green one, this light green one. It's not quite proficiency, but pre-competence, it's being aware of what one doesn't know about working in diverse settings. It says, I'm not this, I'm not this, I'm not this, but I'm learning to be more aware. And so I'm seeking to develop my cultural intelligence. You kind of seeing how I'm mapping a little bit,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And
Perfect.
then you have cultural competence, viewing and interacting in diverse settings.
Yeah.
Now guess what? Guess what? In a matter that is additive, you see how these bricks are all connected? It's because we could be working with people who are culturally destructive and don't even know it. Hopefully not. That's someone you need to probably report to HR. And then you have like blindness. But the reality is these people exist in a world today. And when we choose to stay connected, to bridge this, right? To make it our goal to be culturally proficient, which means to make the commitment to lifelong learning to serve the needs of cultural groups, well then we've connected all this, and we have the self-efficacy and self-esteem to be able to confidently go across the board and help people move through this process.
Mm.
That's what that's all about. I know I've talked a lot about these three ideas, and you can go back, right? Cultural intelligence, culture mapping, and cultural proficiency continuum. But man, I would say, Martijn, if people could, our friends joining us, if they're able to sit in that and engage with that, and then consider, I mean, this isn't even about bricks to some extent, but I've worked in diverse settings as a facilitator with incredibly intelligent folks to middle school kids with Lego Serious Play. And man, if we linger in a model and we're asking questions, and you know that interesting moment where they just built something in 3 minutes and then they're explaining and holding it up and something breaks, and you ask them what happened there, right? And they just start sharing something, and then you ask another question, and you're asking in a way that is culturally conducive to their intersectionality, so that they feel like they belong, but recognize there's an opportunity to go deeper. Can I ask a difficult question? Tell me what happened there.
Yeah.
And you find that, like, I was so frustrated with all my bricks. I've never had the equal number of bricks compared to all of my other colleagues. And so this is the first time ever I've
Yeah.
been able to participate and have the same resources. And then like I built this thing of what it means to be a leader, and that one part that had to do with this broke.
Wow.
Boom. That person working in tech who's a minority in the tech industry or a female in STEM or whatever it may be, whoever this person was, right, that I worked with, that is a moment that thousands of dollars in therapy couldn't solve. And that's why our friend
So we are
Kristen
cheap.
wrote a book on this, right? Wrote a book on
Yeah.
being a therapist and doing legal seriously. And Martijn, you said this. We solve complex problems. Go call a consultant to solve it. Go call Deloitte if that consultant can't find it. Guess what? They're probably not. You better call us after.
Yeah.
And we'll solve it with Lego bricks, right, Martijn?
Exactly.
That's
If
you. You
nothing
told me that
works,
one.
call me. Don't call
Nothing
me too
works,
early.
Tony.
If you
Yeah,
just
yeah.
want to, yeah. One of the things that resonated really a lot was that last model that you showed, that cultural blindness. And I think we have a lot of cultural blindness. I don't say on purpose, but I think we have a lot of cultural blindness that we don't know. And what the other thing that resonated, like some people have like this my culture is the correct culture. What I think is maybe also a definition of culture, right? I have this culture because my whole internal system tells me this is the correct one.
Yeah.
And it looks like this is also the steps that you can make to open it up. That is super, super cool. The interesting for me is also that one of the things, and I'm wondering if I hear that right, if you are a facilitator in Lego Serious Play, start playing, listen to what happens, open up your own, take off your own blindfolds and take your biases out, like, okay, maybe this says something more about me than the others. I want to achieve something. It's just a feedback loop. It's like Einstein. It's just information. Personally, like, I can find another way.
I think what's interesting about what you're sharing is looking at the bottom of LSP, your LSP methodology behind you, right? The individual model and skills building. I think more time what happens when everyone has the same expiration kits in front of them, man. I think that what happens, it does what happened to that one colleague. It level sets. And as they're fiddling with the bricks and we're saying in an appropriate way, like, don't have a conversation with yourself. Just start building. I think there's something that happens in our mind of like, I can do this. And then a facilitator can say, like, you can do this.
Yeah.
Like, we're all here. You're not a lonely guy anymore.
Yeah.
And neurologically, I imagine something shifts where the creative self starts to rise. Martijn. And I think as you're sharing, like, I think when people are fiddling the bricks and just building the tower and then they present their tower and then the facilitator says, look, everyone, same prompt, different towers, right? Here's my forward thinking duck, right? Can we be forward thinking and say, maybe like when people are presenting their towers and the facilitator says, hey, one of our rules of engagement is we don't talk when someone's sharing their model. It starts to deconstruct the bias that was there because of the cultural blindness. And I hadn't thought about that before, Martijn. I think that's the impact of a facilitator or a scrum master, right? Like their job is to create the best possible space for collaboration.
Yeah, that's what I think.
And yeah. So thank you for letting me share that. Yeah.
So
we have time if you want to go longer. Absolutely. This is just so fun.
I think we need to schedule soon a second call with you. Because we're almost at the end of our time. And I was wondering, Curtis, what is something you have to for sure tell us? Otherwise, we cannot have a good night's sleep tonight.
That's a great question. And I like the question that you mentioned around like, hidden elements and LSP that we don't fully understand. So I've been reflecting on that a lot. I think, having the experience standing before like a renowned leader, data analyst, and a judge defending my qualifying exam that talks about this idea of shared understanding being created through Lego Serious Play. I mean, I brought this magazine more time because I'm just so convinced that we can do it. I'm so convinced that the work that you are doing and our colleagues all over the world can do something that our world desperately needs in this world of artificial intelligence, in this world of great uncertainty, right? That there's a magic to this. Man, I think the secret in the methodology is this idea of trust.
Mm.
I think I've been thinking that, and this is about, this is a LSP agile conversation, right?
Yes.
I think when we build trust, right, and consider it as a primary characteristic of leadership and facilitation, what an organizational behavior book says, Robbins and Judge says, it's about integrity. Trust is about integrity, benevolence, and ability. And then trust that enables psychologically safe environments where risk taking, shared information, and enhancing productivity happens. We ought to consider that trust is really what we're unleashing alongside the creativity.
Wow.
And I show this book of Kristen's book on therapy and Lego Serious Play because I'm learning about what they call internal family systems.
Yeah.
Our systems world externally that we play emergence with Lego Serious Play. We can also do that with bricks. I think I just did that with people. Like as I was sharing, there may have been some people listening just like deeply uncomfortable. Like that guy just used the word set concentration camps. Like I didn't use some words that we can't say in America right now. But
If you're
like
talking with a Dutch guy, you can say
but I'm
anything.
talking with a Dutch guy. And I think like I mentioned therapy because there's I'm learning about trust right now, Martijn, and Lego has helped me rethink through how I respond in environments where I just you betrayed my trust or I don't really trust you. I feel like you don't trust me. And I meet with an executive coach every week and we've been talking about trust and he told me about this lady who talks about the currency of trust, Rachel Botsman. Giving you guys all these nuggets to go research. That's why because I'm a PhD, student. You gotta go look up these things and go on a journey yourself. But she talks about it's trust isn't transparency. Like you and I have that, Martijn, like professionally, collegially, personally. Like I feel like I talk to you about everything. But it's not our transparency is because I see you as a person of integrity and reliability. And Rachel says that those two components are what allows someone to move from one side of like, I don't really trust you to I trust you. And that trust leap, like that's the integrity and reliability. And Martijn, like, in kind of well, people got to know to go back to your questions that you won't be able to go to sleep tonight. Martijn, well, the day that I met you years ago, right? I immediately felt that sense of integrity, reliability. You're wearing these wild shirts and telling me like, I'm just going to be me, man. I'm going to be Martijn. I respect that about you. And I was having a conversation about trust with my therapist, and I was like he asked me like, who's a person who really is just unapologetically themselves? And you came into mind, man. And I was like, Martijn, that guy, we hung out, went to the Einstein house. He allowed me to be me, him to be him, and we just had a great time, man. I haven't seen you. I saw you a couple years after that, but you know, it was funny that we talked about you because 2 days later you sent me a message. You said, "Hey, we got to catch up, and I want to get you in a conversation, starting a podcast." And here we are, talking about cultural differences. And months before, I was building out internal family systems with Lego bricks,
Yeah.
and examining when a situation happens at work or a situation happens in the state or politically or whatever. I'm like, what's happening in my internal systems? And then how are those internal systems impacting all the external agents? We build so many shared models on external agents, Martijn. But if we talk about what, and y'all facilitators, do this for yourself. What if you build a shared model of your internal family systems and understand deeply who you are so that, man, you can be the kind of leader who's integrous and reliable and knows who they are. And that's what I've learned from Martijn through these podcasts. That's what I've learned through Martijn from our relationship from afar across the ocean. And I just want to encourage y'all, like be a forward facing duck, like take steps forward today. This is a hard conversation, man. And you can do it. And we can change the world, Martijn. And so I think I can go to sleep because I think that was a good conclusion. But I appreciate you, dear friend. I believe in you. I respect you. You're a significant part to the LSP community that is open source and global. And I respect you and I deeply appreciate you, my friend. Yeah. Thanks for letting me be here.
Thank you so much, Curtis. This is a wonderful compliment shower I get from you.
Yeah.
I think the things that you told today are very valuable. I think you tell super complex things, but with the use of Lego, like this plane that I have here, you can make it awesomely simple. And for all our listeners, only the person that can make something unbelievably complex, awesomely simple, and great to listen to, he must be a master of his trade. Curtis, thank you very much for tonight, and we talk soon again in our next podcast.